When you pour a bowl of delicious Apple Jacks cereal, you start a race between cinnamon and the bad apple. And because Apple Jacks taste like cinnamon and not apples, cinnamon is always the winamon. This is the ad campaign that Kellogg's ran in the early 2000s, but there's more to this campaign than meets the eye. These guys are gay. Gay as fuck. The first ever Apple Jacks commercial to feature these two shows them as rivals. As the campaign implies, they are both racing towards the bowl. Bad Apple lifts, you get one, okay? You just get one. I'm not doing it again. Bad Apple lifts up the sidewalk to send Cinnamon and his skateboard the opposite direction. This establishes Apple's tendencies towards mischief rather than trying to win the race fairly. His plans fail, he falls at the doorstep, Cinnamon soars past him and makes it to the bowl first. Cinnamon is well characterized as the positive competitor who never gives up. When other racers might be devastated by Bad Apple's sidewalk maneuver, Cinnamon made the best of a bad situation and used the extra momentum to speed boost off this tree. It isn't clear if this commercial is their first ever meeting, making this the first bowl of delicious Apple Jacks cereal ever canonically poured, or if we're dropped somewhere in the middle of the timeline, but I'd like to suggest that this is actually their first meeting. Their dialogue towards each other is a little unfamiliar.
Those are my Apple Jacks!
And Apple seems a little surprised that he is not being invited inside to take part in this delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. Maybe it's their first day on the job, they both know of the race because that's what they signed up for, but haven't yet met their rivals. To me, they seem to each other as nothing more than faceless competitors. No names, and the adrenaline and stakes prevent them from properly introducing themselves. I think this moment right here really changes something in Apple. He's clearly lost the race falling here, and as Cinnamon soars over him, he finds himself momentarily enamored. After this first commercial, Apple acts familiar with Cinnamon. He says,
"To you again,"
showing that he actually recognizes him this time. And then when he puts him in this hole, he calls him by a playful nickname, showing that he is at least on a first name basis now. But let's also look at Apple's actions in this one. In the first race, he makes a direct attempt to impede Cinnamon's progress, but he gets unlucky that Cinnamon makes a genius adaptation and uses the momentum of this conveniently curved tree to catch back up. In this commercial, Apple puts him in a hole, which seems like a similar intention, but little do we know that this leads to a subway track. Gives Cinnamon the boost he needs in order to win the race. I find it hard to believe that Bad Apple, who is always found in this city and characterized as a little street smart, even more so in outside promotional material, does not know that that hole would lead to a subway track. Now, whether that means his intent was to give Cinnamon this boost to win the race or strand him on the tracks to die is unclear at this moment, but I think it's worth considering. If Bad Apple's goal is to win the race, why does he place the hole there? Like, we can see that just him crawling through this hole gave him a massive lead. Cinnamon doesn't even have his skateboard this time, and we can see later on that Apple is a comparable speed, if not faster. That lead he gave up to set his trap was more than enough to win this race outright. You could call it ego, you could call it his obsession with mischief, but I think something really doesn't add up here. If mischief and cheating was all he cared about, is using this whole shortcut not enough? I think the Bad Apple has another goal in mind. I think he wants to get closer to Cinnamon. Let's look at the next commercial. It starts off with a similar losing race for Bad Apple, and you cannot convince me this is him sprinting at full speed. This isn't a fucking high school track meet, man. This is the race for the fucking freshly poured delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. We're seriously gonna go at this lackadaisical pace in the final kick? He is comparatively much slower than even the last commercial. Apple's newest scheme in this commercial is to hand sew a Cinnamon suit to deceive Cinnamon into letting him win. It fails because he didn't make eye holes and trips on the way to the bowl. But again, look at the speed that he just caught up there. That's insane, no? Then he intentionally slows down to talk to Cinnamon, and then and only then does he trip and fall. Like, he is running so much faster here to catch up. Wouldn't it make more sense for him to trip here, if anything? And also, if his only goal was to get to the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal, why would he ever slow down as he's about to pass his opponent? Now, it's not immediately fairly obvious, but Apple seems to fall only when his Cinnamon suit dips down and obscures his vision, and then he trips on the hair. But this really doesn't check out. If anything, the Cinnamon suit would naturally dip the other direction, as wind resistance would push it back as Bad Apple runs. I simply don't buy that Bad Apple would miss such a fatal engineering flaw in this suit. I mean, he has blueprints. This wasn't a spur of the moment scheme like the sidewalk. This was premeditated. So what? Am I implying that Bad Apple is throwing these races on purpose? What motive would he possibly have for that? I mean, we're talking about the race for the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. I do believe this scheme was not even about the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal for him. I mean, this is the first time he doesn't even go to see the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal after losing. His head is not in the game. I think the Bad Apple was trying to get to know Cinnamon better. I mean, think about it. These guys have been in 2 races before. Each one, the Apple has gotten much closer to Cinnamon, from not knowing the guy to knowing his name and now trying to imitate him. I think the Bad Apple just wanted Cinnamon to notice him. I've been talking a lot about the Bad Apple so far, and that's mainly because Cinnamon is so laser focused on his goal. His words to live by are, "Here I come, I am Cinnamon," and "Cinnamon is the Winamon." 2 philosophies that rely on his ability to perform. If Cinnamon isn't the Winamon, then what is he? I think Apple noticed this philosophy and wanted to dig a little deeper to meet the real Cinnamon. What is Cinnamon really like under the competitive mask? Now, this might have been a somewhat problematic way to go about it, but Cinnamon seems flattered by the gesture. You can see a genuine smile as they briefly chat here. Was this trip really a result of Apple's outfit malfunction, or perhaps a moment where his heart skipped a beat? Did Apple finally get a good look at his intoxicating smile up close, causing him to nervously fumble to the ground while his heart fluttered to the heavens? Again, it seems like speculation here, but keep with me. You should like the video and subscribe and leave a comment about how much you love gay Apple Jacks. Our next commercial shows the Bad Apple dreaming about being the first into the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. Well, okay, there goes my theorizing. This guy clearly does care about getting into the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. But this dream is not just about getting into the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. The first part of this dream shows him trapping Cinnamon in a cage before he goes on to the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. Now, trapping Cinnamon in a cage might not seem like a sign of affection, but we have to remember that this is a dream here, and dreams are meant to symbolize real emotions that are deeper within. Cinnamon is always running, hyper-focused on the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal, full steam ahead. Cinnamon needs to be the Winamon. I think Bad Apple trapping Cinnamon here symbolizes his desire for Cinnamon to slow down and acknowledge him. Like, seriously, we're 4 races in, and we don't even know if Cinnamon knows this guy's name. Cinnamon being trapped in a cage forces him to stop, slow down, and acknowledge the formidable opponent who put him there. And the Bad Apple seems almost happier about this dynamic than actually reaching the bowl. Almost as if to say, now you have to acknowledge me, Cinnamon. Again, this is a dream. If the Bad Apple's subconscious only really cared about getting to the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal, why would Cinnamon even be here? Apple could just dream of beating him in one of their normal races, or even just dream without him there at all, in a world where that delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal is all his. But he doesn't. He dreams first of trapping Cinnamon, forcing him to see him as an equal, a peer, and only then, secondarily diving into the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. You don't just dream about another man in a cage for no reason. There's something deep within Bad Apple's subconscious that is creating this situation. We have one final commercial in this arc, and I don't think there's much to add here. We have Apple scoping out the race with binoculars. Keep notice here that he he's looking at Cinnamon before looking at the bowl of delicious Applejack cereal. He then flies from this rooftop over to the window, but misses at the last second. I think the Bad Apple is a really well-rounded individual. He has the strength to lift a sidewalk tile, he has the ability to manipulate holes, he's crafty, quite the tinkerer, and we know he gets a good night's sleep. I find it hard to believe that he would not know how to pilot his own helicopter helmet. I mean, this is coming from his patented bag of tricks. Not to mention that this commercial starts with the bowl of Applejack cereal already poured before it starts. You mean to tell me that a competitor seriously trying to be the first to the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal would waste all this time waiting for Cinnamon to get close before even attempting to use the helicopter helmet? No, the Bad Apple has the means and intellect to get to this bowl first, miles ahead even. Even if he didn't have control of this helmet, why didn't he bring like a hole or something as a failsafe to get through the wall? What flies out of his bag of tricks here is an Applejack spy spoon, which you could use to solve various puzzles on the back of the box. It doesn't seem to have too much relevance to the overall story, but it could be interpreted as an intentional gift for Cinnamon. Is it a coincidence that the one item to fall out of his bag of tricks was something Cinnamon could use to enjoy the fun puzzles and games on the back of a delicious box of Applejack cereal? Maybe, but all these potential coincidences together seem a little too good to be true, and I would rather use them to paint a clear pattern of behavior. Now, there are some real-world factors at play before this next arc in the storyline. Basically, there was backlash around this initial campaign because of the way that the Bad Apple was characterized. Health food nonprofits did not want kids to see healthy foods like apples as antagonists because they thought it would make kids less likely to eat apples. And because of that, the Bad Apple is going to be absent from the next few commercials. That being said, isn't it super convenient that the first commercial back without the Bad Apple, Cinnamon gets lost on his way to finding the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal. Cinnamon has been characterized as this hyper-focused guy, eyes on the prize, one thing on the mind. If you asked me a few races ago if I thought Cinnamon would get lost on his way to the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal, I would have laughed straight in your face. He's just not that kind of racer. This lack of focus continues into his other solo commercial. He just doesn't have that iron determination he used to. He's gotten sloppy. In earlier commercials, he was often found resting at the start of races, conserving his energy and listening like a hawk for that iconic jingle. But here, he's gotten restless, walking aimlessly around the beach, carelessly putting himself in harm's way. Cinnamon does not care nearly as much anymore, and the only thing that's changed is that the Bad Apple is gone. Whether he misses the thrill of competition, or maybe it's the absence of someone he didn't realize he would miss so dearly. Something is very clearly wrong here. Luckily, this solo arc doesn't last long, as they were able to bring back the Bad Apple as long as they stopped calling him the Bad Apple, and didn't portray him as an antagonist. His name in canon is now just Apple. Now, I would not blame you if you thought I was reaching a bit. I made a pretty bold claim that these are two gay men in love, and while I do think I'm bringing up a pretty valid interpretation, that's all it is, an interpretation. It's not like we've found any proof of their physical attraction for each other. So with that in mind, I want to move on to the next arc, which I dub the gay sex arc, the one where they penetrate each other. Apple makes a cinematic return from his hiatus by jumping out of the plane straight on top of Cinnamon. Now Cinnamon is stuck lodged inside of Apple. This isn't like a gross scientific experiment that fused them together. If we go in slow motion here, we can clearly see the moment where Cinnamon enters the Apple's asshole, impaling his entire body and coming out the other side. Neither of them seem too worked up about this situation either. I mean, there's initial horror. Can you really blame them for that though? This kind of begs the question, given how we've characterized Apple so far, was this intentional? Trying to flatter him, dreaming about him noticing you, giving him gifts, is this the final evolution of forcing him to notice you? The odds of lodging Cinnamon up your ass by accident are extremely low. I mean, with wind resistance, the speed of the plane, onto a moving target that is this thin, it almost feels too precise to not be on purpose. Was this the in-lore reason for his absence? Was he planning this, hiring a pilot, learning how to skydive, and meticulously calculating all the variables to perfectly anal vor Cinnamon? Regardless, we see in the solo Cinnamon arc that maybe an act this bold wasn't even needed. We know that Cinnamon missed him, and I think while neither character will admit it out loud this episode, they they are content with the situation. So content, in fact, that the next episode starts with them moving in together. Like, hey, I don't know about you, but if I had someone jammed up my asshole, my first thought would be, how the fuck do I get this guy out of my asshole? And not the logistics of living the rest of our lives together. Despite being competitors that race towards the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal, they're doing it together now. Apple has taken interest in Cinnamon's hobbies. Cinnamon famously won their first race together on a skateboard. It's clear that skateboarding holds some emotional significance. But here, Apple takes the reins. He wants to show off to Cinnamon that he can do it too. It's cute. Apple might not be the best skateboarder. They may have caused some property damage, but they both seem to be having a great time sharing in each other's interests. It's not until the next commercial that we see them attempt any sort of problem solving whatsoever. Like, they didn't even bother to search the word unstuck into a search engine for what we know to be at least 2 calls of the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal and them getting an apartment together. But considering the time it would take to ship a large device like the unsticker, my assumption is that they had to be stuck together for at least a month or 2 in canon. While we know that these commercials themselves aired all throughout 2007, they enjoy being close to each other, inside of each other, and only now do they realize we don't have to be constantly lodged inside of each other to show our affection. We can live as separate people and still feel this close. The following race is also just really heartwarming. 2 competitors with a newfound respect for each other just duking it out for the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal the old-fashioned way, with an absolute nail-biting photo finish. The post-credit scene actually reveals that the sport may no longer be taken as seriously as it used to. Obviously, the outside complaints mandated that both competitors need to make it to the bowl, but it seems like there's no longer even a common consensus on who won the race anymore, with Apple and Cinnamon jokingly bantering about it on their way home.
I got the first.
Did not.
Did 2.
Did not.
Did 2.
Did not.
I've decided to start going frame by frame through these races to get the actual winner, just out of respect for the sport. It looks like Cinnamon makes it in just a little before Apple here. This arc absolutely led to the largest chunk of character development. Following their separation, it's clear that they now see each other in a much different light. Whoa, that was kind of cinema. Like this first commercial in the Friendly Lovers arc here. They start this race at a line and go on a countdown. The old Bad Apple, who is obsessed with mischievous tricks and cheating to get ahead, would never agree to a format so fair. He would absolutely go before the countdown ended. But the new Apple is an entirely new man, and Cinnamon too. He's got this cheeky banter going on.
I'm in front.
Not for long.
Before, this guy was so focused on the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal, and while he still chants his iconic mantras, he also has some time to acknowledge the opponent right next to him. This new era of racing to the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal almost feels like they're putting on a show. We used to just run there by foot, but now we're drag racing through the streets, the city, the desert, even doing elaborate maneuvers to create these impressive crisscross shapes. There's a new bond of mutual respect as a direct result of these 2 men spending so much time inside of each other, and their mutual love for the sport and adoration for each other seems to be pushing the sport to new levels. I mean, just look at this cinematic dive into the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal. It's flashy, but also shows how comfortable they are with each other's bodies. You'd be hard-pressed to find duo figure skaters capable of such complex and intimate maneuvers. Also, while this camera angle is not super conducive to figuring out a winner, it does seem as if they entered the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal at the same time, but Cinnamon's head seems to slightly wrap around the top of Apple, giving him a photo finish victory. Honestly, incredible stuff here. Our next commercial kind of deepens our understanding of the new status quo. Again, the elevation of the sport. New gadgets and spectacle. Apple has a super cool approach with this grapple gun, almost Spider-Man-esque, while Cinnamon uses this crazy pogo stick. All around, just a fan of the game and its evolution here, especially the ways in which their philosophies and approaches lead to such unprecedented races. Like this wrecking ball shortcut is textbook Apple. Thinking on his feet, adapting to his surroundings, while Cinnamon's always been the more by-the-books kind of racer, sticking to his initial game plan and his solid fundamentals. I love the clash of ideologies at their fullest potential. Apple's quick thinking actually does get them a victory here. I think this is actually the first recorded Apple victory in the history of the sport, so honestly just a monumental race all around. One that will go down in history, and well deserved too. The old Cinnamon might have very easily been devastated by a loss like this, but we see see that he is still very much in high spirits. You gotta love the sportsmanship of these guys, pushing, elevating the sports, and still being so friendly and comfortable with each other, even doing 4 fun races in the off season.
Okay.
You love to see it. Also, the physical contact on these dives into the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal cannot be understated. Like, Apple having this much height coming off the wrecking ball makes sense, but Cinnamon is running in on foot here. Did he jump into Apple wanting this physical contact, or... Wait a second. Cinnamon, you sly dog. Apple was coming in off that wrecking ball way too fast. In fact, if Cinnamon didn't jump all the way up there to intercept him, he would have soared way past the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal and embarrassed himself on the world stage. We saw Apple make these sacrifice plays for the sake of Cinnamon before the gay sex arc, but to think that Cinnamon is the Winamon Cinnamon would give up his chance of winning the race to the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal just to give Apple his big victory. I mean, even though these guys are good friends now, we can see how much a win would mean to Apple. He's been debating the results of these last 2 very close races in a playful manner, but you gotta remember that this is a world-class competitor who has never taken home a delicious bowl of Applejack cereal. That's gotta sting a little bit, right? I feel like Cinnamon had to have noticed this and made the sacrifice play to give Apple his unambiguous victory that he's always wanted. In this next commercial, Apple gets to the bowl and Cinnamon is nowhere to be found. Yeah, that's a little weird, right? Again, this next commercial, Apple gets to the bowl and Cinnamon is nowhere to be found. So Apple calls Cinnamon. By the way, they've not only exchanged phone numbers, but I think Apple has him on speed dial. I'm not gonna lie, I'm Gen Z. I don't really know what speed dial is, but he only dialed 3 digits, so I'm assuming that's what it is. But I don't think I even have to point out how the old Apple would have taken this opportunity in a heartbeat, but the new Apple calls Cinnamon, fucks around a little bit to let him catch up, and ends up losing this race by a split second. Don't even get me started on the old Cinnamon. Sleeping through a race? If you told me before the gay sex arc that Cinnamon would sleep through a race, forget about it. This guy sleeps and is awake the moment he hears that iconic jingle. Something's clearly changed in Cinnamon. Let's also note how low Cinnamon jumps in this race where he was clearly in a rush. Super low to the bowl, almost no airtime versus that last race where he crashed into Apple. The next commercial seems to be more like Apple and Cinnamon taking some sort of sponsorship offer for Applejack cereal straws. Rather than an actual race or development of their characters, it's a cute commercial, but I don't think it's worth talking about that much. The next arc starts with Apple showing Cinnamon his new invention, a teleporter that will take you directly to the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal. I'm a little iffy on this idea as a whole. I really enjoy Apple's playstyle and never-ending bag of tricks and gadgets, but this one feels like it takes things a little too far. It's fun watching the race evolve with grapple guns, helicopter helmets, etc., but just skipping the race to get there instantly seems like a step too far. Luckily, this invention does not work, but ends up transporting them to New York City in the real world. They're stranded here, the remote is smashed, but the silver lining is that the real world also is filled to the brim with delicious bowls of Applejack cereal. They waste no time here. Apple is honestly in his natural element. Tons of things in the environment to utilize, the race isn't even close. I think I'll call this arc the Honeymoon Arc. They don't seem too worked up about not knowing how to get back home, and they seem to just enjoy each other's company exploring this new world together. Like, we start our next commercial on top of the Seattle Space Needle. These guys traveled from coast to coast, seeing the sights and enjoying the world. I don't think I have much to say about this one. They glide down from the Space Needle into a faraway apartment using this dirty piece of paper, and Apple wins. I do think it's a little disrespectful to the sport to take this paper into the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal. Like, we've left vehicles and gadgets behind in the past. Why are we now just allowing a random piece of discarded paper into that delicious bowl of Applejack cereal? It seems like a mockery to me. Perhaps these guys have gotten a bit too complacent, or perhaps the rules in this new league are a lot more lax. But I've gotta say, I'm disappointed in you, Apple and Cinnamon. The delicious bowl of Applejack cereal used to mean something. Do better. This next commercial is more classic antics. I feel like their relationship is already set in stone by this point, so nothing super new. Just a good old-fashioned race to the delicious bowl of Applejack cereal. Can't go wrong with that. One note here, I just find this clip a little confusing.
Kids love me.
The way Cinnamon reacts here really caught me off guard. Like, don't get me wrong, what Apple said can be taken in a weird way, but I also don't don't think it's a strange thing for a celebrity who is adored by a lot of kids to say. I just don't know what they were implying with Cinnamon's reaction in this scene. Anyways, Cinnamon takes home the dub. Let's move on. We got another standard race to start off. It's a close one, but Apple wins by a hair. It's what happens after this race that we're gonna want to focus on. After the race, they are walking down the street, some light banter, when they spot a grocery store absolutely stocked to the brim with delicious Apple Jacks cereal. Now, if you still don't think they're gay, I think this would be some of the strongest counter evidence. Apple tries flirting with these apples in the grocery store. I took this scene as Apple being mischievous and trying to mess with Cinnamon to make him jealous. I don't even know if Apple can be attracted to non-sentient apples. It kind of feels like if a human was jokingly flirting with a statue. But regardless of your interpretation there, what comes next is honestly gut-wrenching. Apple is abducted in broad daylight, and I have never seen Cinnamon so distraught. Like, even when he's depicted in a cage, or when he finds out he's fused to another man, he still manages to hold it together. Just look at the pain in his expression as Apple is being taken away. Have you ever seen anyone more sad and depressing? Okay, you can cut away. Not to mention Apple's voice screaming in desperation at the only person he can confide in this big unfamiliar world.
Will Cinnamon find Apple?
This scene is heartbreaking to watch. These characters that we've spent all this time with, watching their relationships slowly develop, and finally when we think everything is gonna work out and they can just enjoy spending the rest of their lives together, life finds a way of punching you in the stomach. We don't know much about the mysterious abductor, but I do want to point out that this isn't like a Toy Story kind of situation. These kids in the previous commercial were able to see Apple and Cinnamon racing and talking. I mean, these guys are celebrities. They're on the box of delicious Apple Jacks cereal. So I think there's a couple motives we could assign here. She could be a crazed fan, or she could be really homophobic, and this is a hate crime. This abduction does actually get resolved in between commercials. You see, if you went to applejacks.com at the time, you could play Apple Jacks Appley Recovery, where you play as Cinnamon navigating his way through 3 levels of a grocery store, collecting colored Apple keys and avoiding children with somewhat questionable pathing AI. Like, hey, GG's kid, I guess you got me. But it's implied once you beat level 3 that you find Apple, and that sets up the next commercial. I will say Apple Jacks had a lot of these little flash games, and it was pretty fun to look back at them. Just an entirely different era of advertising. They're awesome. If you want to see more, I'm gonna upload a long play of all the Apple Jacks flash games I have access to on my second channel the same day that this video goes up. Our next commercial is a standard race and a quick Apple victory, then followed by a suspiciously similar scene of them stumbling upon delicious boxes of Apple Jacks cereal in the grocery store. This is the start of the clone arc, where they see the boxes now feature the new clone shape. This episode is more of a setup for the huge bomb that the next episode will drop. We start with this same shot of Apple and Cinnamon walking to the grocery store. Apple singing this absolute banger.
Apple Jacks, not Cinna Jacks, but Apple Jacks!
They seem surprised by the Apple clone boxes despite just seeing them in the last episode, but this time the Apple clones are not just on the box. Before they know it, they are swarmed by Apple clones, and while Apple seems delighted at first, he pretty quickly gets tossed around and lost in the crowd. This is the last time we will ever see Apple and Cinnamon on the screen together again. Cinnamon, again, absolutely distraught, desperately searching through the crowd of apples looking for his beloved partner. I think this scene is really strong as it shows their relationship is so much deeper than surface level attraction. Surrounded by exact clones of his partner, he isn't even distracted for a second, searching for the one he truly loves among a sea of cheap fakes. Now, what's sad about this story is that it never gets resolved. You're supposed to go to applejacks.com again to help Cinnamon find the real Apple, but for the life of me, I cannot find this game. It seems not every Apple Jacks Flash game has been properly archived for some reason. The best I could find was the existence of a Flash game called Clones Quest on an old archive of the website, but obviously I can't get the page to actually let me play it. We do get a description confirming that this is the game where Cinnamon tries to find the real Apple. Apple Jacks Clones Quest is unfortunately, as far as I I know right now, lost media. If anyone can find a way to recover this crucial missing piece of the Apple Jacks lore, please contact me through email, Blue Sky, or Discord. I will PayPal you like a $50 bounty. Now, we can sit around and hope that they get a happy ending in this Flash game, but I honestly would not be too sure. This is the final commercial of this ad campaign. Cinnamon and Apple would never grace our TV screens together again after this. The end of this series is Cinnamon desperately trying to search for his partner. We do not know if Cinnamon ever finds Apple. Now, I did say that these two would never grace the screen together again, and that's because there is one more commercial in the series, and we can kind of fill in some of the blanks here. This is Cinnamon Jacks, and this commercial is actually heartbreaking. To those not following the lore too closely, it might just seem like an innocent promotion for their new cereal, but those who know can parse what is going on below the surface. For context, there was at least a 1-year hiatus between the clone arc and this commercial. There's a lot of blanks to fill in on the timeline here. For one, Cinnamon managed to find his way home to the original world on Cinna Island. We don't know how, the remote was clearly broken, and Apple was always more of the tech guy. But speaking of Apple, he's nowhere to be seen. This commercial seems to be in some sort of cinnamon ethno state. Now, to be clear, it's possible that Cinnamon could have found Apple and they could have come back together, but it's also just as likely that the Apple clones could have helped him find a way back too. Let's just think about it for a minute. These guys have been racing to the delicious bowl of Apple Jacks cereal together this entire series, obviously except when outside controversy restricted them from doing so. We haven't had a race to the bowl in all of these years. I find that hard to believe. This commercial feels like grief to me. Cinnamon puts on a big smile and an intoxicating performance, and that's because that's just what he does. He loves to perform, but we're also missing a huge part of him. Cinnamon is the Winamon. Here I come, I am Cinnamon. The philosophies he lived his life by for the past decade, nowhere to be seen. To me, it feels like he's distracting himself with drugs, loud music, and Cinnamon Jacks. I think there's a valid parallel here between the disappearance of Apple and this Cinnamon Jacks commercial. Apple is surrounded by clones of himself before disappearing. Now we see Cinnamon surrounding himself with cinnamon-based homunculi trying to disappear. The only difference here is that there's no one left to look for him. Survivor's guilt. If Cinnamon was just a little more alert like in the old days, maybe a little less comfortable with the current situation, maybe he could have noticed the clones approaching. Maybe he could have grabbed Apple before he was taken away. If they were just Cinnamon clones, maybe he could have been taken instead. And maybe if Cinnamon's goal was to disappear like Apple did, then maybe he got his wish. To me, this commercial is a manifestation of Cinnamon's grief. This ad campaign was a complete failure. He never did another commercial again after this, and Cinnamon Jacks were discontinued only a few years later. We all know this commercial isn't him. Cinnamon took this ad deal because for the past year he has been washed up, sulking in misery. Cinnamon needed something to keep himself sustained. Executives and agents probably breathing down his neck, get back out there, sell, sell, sell. He tried a solo endeavor. He tried to make it work alone, but this whole commercial has an almost eerie absence ringing through it. You can't even think of the name Cinnamon Jacks without thinking about Apple Jacks. Cinnamon and Apple were on top of the world together, but without Apple, Cinnamon lost his passion, his spark. This commercial is generic and corporate. All the things Cinnamon loved to do, racing, skateboarding, quiet time to himself on the beach, completely gone. Cinnamon is missing an apple-shaped part of himself. Apple Jacks cereal is a tragic story about forbidden love. From heated rivals to heated lovers, these two formed a real relationship over the course of these commercials. You want them to have a happy ending, you want to root for them, and just when you think everything is fine, life can swoop in and ruin everything in an instant. When something goes wrong, you lose the love of your life. The crushing wheels of capitalism don't stop to grieve with you. Cinnamon needed to keep moving, needed to make money to keep living, but he could not keep up this facade for long. Cinnamon did not want to have to keep living a lie, that everything is okay, that he's capable of celebrating good times during the worst times of his life. Apple and Cinnamon would remain on the delicious box of Apple Jacks cereal for a few years after this. Cinnamon would soon go bald, likely from the stress and grief, until they were eventually replaced by these new apple and cinnamon characters that we know nothing about. Perhaps Kellogg's learned their lesson about letting us see too much. Perhaps these new characters are exactly what they wanted: soulless, emotionless, and distanced branding machines that won't get too attached. They've never even filmed a full commercial together. These guys solely exist to be on the front of the box, to replace what once was. When I look at these new boxes, I always remember those that came before. I can't see these characters as anything but paltry imitations, sucking the life out of the ones who captured our imaginations and hearts. Apple Jacks is a brand. Kellogg's is a corporation. But Apple and Cinnamon, they were human, they were lovers, they were the Winamon. And if you still don't think they're gay, here is a picture of them sloppily making out. Get owned.